I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And now for the Texas Pledge. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to the Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Please remain standing for a moment of silence.
From the Studio of Dreams at Tour Nation Productions, Mia Cardenas.
Reporting from the Studio of Dreams located at Ball High School in Galveston, Texas. Welcome to the award-winning Good Morning Ball High. I'm Logan Martis, filling in for Mia Cardenas. Today is the Purple Day, and all students will complete assignments for periods 1, 3, 5, and 7. Now, stay tuned for today's Time Rewind, courtesy of our good friend David Mendel.
And liftoff of the 25th Space Shuttle mission.
It's Time Rewind for January 28th. By 1986, space shuttle launches had become almost routine. However, this particular mission is anything but. For one thing, it marks the first time a civilian was to journey into space. New Hampshire school teacher Krista McAuliffe. Her participation as a crew member captivates the nation. But 74 seconds into the flight, disaster strikes.
We have a report relayed through the flight dynamics officer that the vehicle has exploded.
It isn't long before the catastrophe is fully realized. Challenger is destroyed and there are no survivors. That evening, President Ronald Reagan takes to the airwaves to console the country.
I know it's hard to understand, but sometimes painful things like this happen. It's all part of the process of exploration and discovery, taking a chance and expanding man's horizons. The future doesn't belong to the faint-hearted. It belongs to the brave.
That's Time Rewind. I'm David Mendel.
Planning is already underway for the class of 2021's project graduation. Representatives will be in the cafeteria during all lunches on Tuesdays and Thursdays to answer questions and distribute raffle tickets. The next planning committee meeting is scheduled for Monday, February 15th at 6 p.m. at Mario's on the Seawall. And the tour discount card, sponsored by Project Graduation, is available for $10. Don't miss out. Mr. Dudas has them ready for purchase in room 2003. Optimus International is accepting entries for its annual essay contest, which is open to middle and high school students, ages 19 and younger. Reaching your dreams by choosing optimism is this year's theme. The deadline is February 12th. First place will win $250 and an opportunity to compete in a competition for a $2,500 college scholarship. For further information, click the link below. The library is open and here to serve you. Of course, there are currently some restrictions. The library staff is here to assist you. And you can even order books from home. For further information, go to the link below. Attention all seniors. Balfour will be on campus during all lunches today to continue taking cap and gown orders from students. Please see Ms. Schumann for any questions. The Student Council is sponsoring a winter clothing drive. Stuco will be collecting warming clothing, blankets, and socks through February 1st. Drop off your donations in one of the boxes by the auditorium, commons area, or by the clock tower. Student parking is free this year. There are no reserved spots. Remember, the student parking lot is a lot across from the auditorium between Ball and the Scott Building. Attention all seniors. Stay up to date on all important information and news by texting at BH2020grad to 81010. Sign up via the Remind app today. And as always, stay safe and don't forget to practice proper social distancing. I'm Logan, wishing you a terrific day.
This is a Cox News Alert. Good morning, Ball High. I'm Liberty Cox here with Mr. Kelso, teacher and department co-chair in the Social Studies Department. You have led efforts in World War II research, and this time last year, Galveston Daily News ran an article regarding Ball High alumni that died in World War II. Now, information came to light about one of the 86 Ball High heroes. Please tell us about it.
Well, Liberty, thank you for having me, and thank the Tour Nation Studios for inviting me this morning. With the idea of Lieutenant Justin Mills last year, it started an effort by several teachers here at Ball High, including Major Knight, Coach Schuster, and Miss Neff, and I to identify the Ball High alumni who perished in World War II. And through those efforts, we did identify 86 students, or former students at Ball High, or people connected to Ball High, that died in World War II. Well, recently, word came down from the Defense Department Accountability Agency that there may be another Ball High alum that is going to be ID'd 80 years later. And that is Captain George Halsey Peets from the class of 1926. His remains were buried in Manila as an unknown. And Pete's story is very interesting. He graduated from Ball High in 1926, attended Texas A&M University, and after Texas A&M University, the Great Depression hit. So Pete's actually got a job with the Civilian Conservation Corps. And when the Civilian Conservation Corps disbanded, or his job was over, he was drafted into the regular army during the first peacetime draft in 1940 and sent to the Philippine Islands, where he was captured by the Japanese in April of 1942, went through the Bataan Death March and the prison camps. Well, in December of 1944, Captain Pete's was part of a prisoner of war draft that was to be sent to Japan from the Philippines. And their transportation to Japan was a ship called the Oryoku Maru. Now, this was a Japanese cruise liner that prior to the war was kind of the pearl of the Japanese cruise industry. Well, now it was a converted troop ship. Well, the prisoners were loaded not in the cabins but down in the holds of the ship, and they were packed in there like sardines. The conditions were not very good. Well, at that time, the U.S. Navy had blockaded the Philippines. We were retaking the Pacific. General MacArthur had already landed in Leyte, and the Japanese were putting forth this crash program to get American prisoners of war out of the Philippines. So Captain Pete's found himself on this draft and was placed aboard the Oryoku Maru, and they departed Manila the evening of December 13th, 1944. Well, as the ship left the Philippines the next morning, because again the United States Navy had the Philippines blockaded, Navy fighter planes spotted the Oryoku Maru off the west coast of the Bataan Peninsula and called in an airstrike. And the ship was not marked as carrying 1,621 POWs. So the U.S. Navy attacked the ship and disabled it. Well, the next morning on December 15th, the Japanese had moved the ship into the inner harbor of Subic Bay. Now, for those of you familiar with the geography of the Philippines, Subic Bay is on the west coast of Luzon. And it was a large U.S. Navy base from 1898 to about 1992. And the Oryoku Maru was found in this inner harbor, and the Navy attacked again, this time dropping a bomb into the rear hold, killing about 250 prisoners and wounding about another 100. Captain Pete's was wounded in this bombing. Well, the Japanese abandoned the ship and brought the prisoners ashore and decided to continue the trip to Japan. Well, they had to move the prisoners overland from Subic Bay to the embarkation point in the northern part of Luzon and on the Lingayen Gulf. And in the process of moving the prisoners ashore and moving them to this embarkation point, they stopped in a town called San Fernando, Pampanga, which is right in the middle of Luzon in the Philippines, and quartered the prisoners in two different places. Well, Captain Pete's died at this point in San Fernando, Pampanga, and was buried in the local cemetery by the Japanese. Well, fast forward 77 years later, fast forward 2 years later, the defense, or back then the Army, through debriefings was able to locate the remains of these prisoners that died there in San Fernando, and did locate the remains. But unfortunately, due to the primitive forensic science at the time, they were not able to positively ID Lieutenant Pete's remains. Well, fast forward 77 years later, with DNA technology and new forensics, the Defense Department is relooking at Lieutenant Pete's cases. In fact, in November of last year, the Defense Department Accountability Agency put out a program detailing the project to account for these casualties from the Oryoku Maru. And one of them was the exhumation and ID of the unknowns from the San Fernando Pampanga incident, which included Ball High Class of 1926 Captain George Halsey Pete's. So this is ongoing, and hopefully we ID Captain Pete's, and when we do, we're going to celebrate here at Ball High.
Wow, that's interesting. What was the most surprising thing in this research for you?
Well, the research for me actually started about 20 years ago because my grandfather was also on the Oryoku Maru with Captain Pete's. And my grandfather died in Japan as a POW after the remaining prisoners made it to Japan. And the sad thing about it is, they started off in Manila with 1,621 prisoners, and only 403 survived the war after the ordeal. It's worth a Google.
Mr. Kelso, thanks so much.
Liberty, thank
now
you.
back to our regularly scheduled programming.
Morning Ball High is produced by the students in the Media Arts Small Learning Community at Ball High School in Galveston, Texas.